Samantha shivered and covered her throat with an old knitted scarf. There was no bus on the horizon, only cars winking their headlights in the evening haze. Once again, she was not hired, for the umpteenth time, and money flowed away like water every day. Samantha breathed on her hands, trying to warm them. It was a bleak November day, 2 degrees below zero. Sleet drizzled from the sky, and the penetrating wind ravenously fluttered the hair of passers-by and the bushes and tree branches. An empty carton box flew past, rustling on the wet asphalt. Samantha watched it with a detached look, involuntarily feeling that her own life was like that cardboard container, empty, shabby, and carried away by the forces of fate, wherever luck would have it. But 6 months ago everything had been different. There were plans, goals, a settled rhythm of everyday affairs, confidence in the future. The bus pulled up at the stop, puffed, squeaked its brakes, and opened its doors. Samantha, holding her hood, hurriedly jumped inside into the warmth and sat down on a vacant seat. It was impossible to give up. Whatever happened, she had to climb, try, hold on. Nowadays, it's rare to find couples who live in a quiet marriage for a long time, but Samantha did. She and Neil had spent 2 decades together. They quarrelled, but always reconciled, because it was necessary, and proper because family was more important. Especially when they had children. Where was the time to sort out relationship issues when their daughter needed help with lessons, patties were frying on the stove, and rising dough was trying to escape from the pot? There were always essential things to do, and the essential things were enough every day. Samantha and Neil met at a bus stop during their student days. Persistent, Neil courted the hesitant girl for a long time, but in the end, 10 months later, they got married. "Why are you fooling around, Samantha?" her mother strictly questioned. "Take him while you can. He's a good guy, hard-working, simple. Not handsome, but that's not what is important in men." "That's true," sighed Samantha. "You'd better take him before all the good ones are taken," her mother persisted, "or you'll be left to choose from the drunkards and lazy ones." Samantha gave in under the pressure of her mother's repeated conversations and common sense. The wedding was modest but beautiful. Her husband had just started working as a turner at the factory, earning little. Samantha dreamed of the stage and studied at the theatre school. How could a family of a turner and an aspiring artist live? Not too richly. At first they huddled in 2 rooms with Samantha's in-laws, and as usual, the mother-in-law didn't spare the young daughter-in-law her own kitchen. The pancakes weren't fried right. The dishes weren't wiped with the right towel. Samantha tolerated it and tried to listen to the advice of her elders. She didn't tell her husband about the clashes with his mother, for now, but she voiced the idea of living separately repeatedly. However, after 3 years, Neil shocked his wife with the news that they were buying a house and moving to the suburbs. "You'll be growing cherries, apples, pears," her husband joyfully told her. "We'll plant a vegetable garden. We'll have chickens." Samantha, on the one hand, rejoiced at the move. On the other, she didn't share her husband's enthusiasm about the vegetable garden and chickens. She dreamed of performing on the stage, and getting rid of the weeds in the vegetable garden or caring for animals was alien to Samantha. As for Neil, he never spoke badly about her chosen profession, but also didn't admire it. He was rather indifferent to his wife's choice, unlike his mother, who considered such an occupation a waste of time. The plot was large, but the house required thorough repairs, and commuting to the theatre from there was extremely inconvenient. Samantha sighed and again resigned herself. They moved in and began to make repairs little by little. Still, life in their own house, albeit old, was better than living with in-laws. "I told you he was a good man." Her mother looked around her daughter's new home. "And once you make repairs, you will be happy. Take my word for it." Samantha nodded, but kept silent about the fact that it was very far to go to the theatre, and there were so many things to do in the house that 10 hands wouldn't be enough. Then came the first pregnancy. Samantha vomited from everything. She couldn't eat or go out, and cooked for her husband while fighting nausea. Of course, with such a state of well-being, she had to put a stop to the theatre. The team didn't need an actress who was always late and appeared irregularly. Neil worked very hard to complete the repairs as soon as possible. He was motivated by the birth of his son, Matt. Samantha was getting into the role of mother, accustomed to getting up in the middle of the night, rocking, playing and bathing. In the series of maternal everyday life, she sometimes imagined that there was no theatre, no other life, and all her past was fiction or a dream. "I fulfilled all the male duties," Neil bragged to his family on their 5th wedding anniversary, counting on his fingers. "Built a house, planted a tree, and had a son." He gestured around himself, pointed to the window behind which stood a young cherry tree, and then rubbed the head of 2-year-old Matt sitting on his mother's lap. With every summer, Samantha had plenty of work to do. Samantha needed to weed the beds, pick strawberries, and water the tomatoes and cucumbers. So, the failed actress learned to make pickles and jams, which Neil generously distributed to relatives. Over the years, the family found themselves caught in an ever-increasing whirlwind of responsibilities, spinning like squirrels in a wheel. They didn't search for the stars, but they lived no worse than others. In this maelstrom, there was no room for Samantha's longing for the theatre, youthful hopes, or secret dreams. In rare moments of rest, she sat down in the kitchen window with a cup of tea, gazing at the clouds and trying to clear her mind. However, she could rarely sit for more than 15 minutes. Something always demanded immediate attention. "Idleness is the root of all trouble," Samantha's mother would say. "When a person is busy, there's no time for nonsense. In our time, we used to work and live harmoniously. And now? Ugh!" When Matt was 3 years old, his younger sister Anita was born. From the outside, their family appeared exemplary. A hard-working head of the household, a diligent wife, and 2 angelic kids. Neil bought them toys and treats. Samantha watched and rejoiced, but now and then a pang of longing for her beloved theatre pierced her chest. Despite the passing years, she still remembered the smell of the stage, the jokes in the dressing room, the dusty curtains in the corners, and the creaky pair of chairs in the 7th row. As the children grew older, Neil arranged for them to attend summer camps. In their absence, the couple occasionally visited friends, went for walks, or took vacations themselves. However, Samantha couldn't fully enjoy these moments. Her husband was a workaholic, and even on vacation, he obsessed over what else needed to be done, improved or finished. "It's time to re-roof the house," Neil would inform his wife, collapsing into a chaise longue. "We'll build a sauna next year. Oh, and the wiring in the garage needs repair." These conversations left their bodies rested, but their minds cluttered with thoughts of the house and its endless demands. Over time, the texts of once memorized roles and phrases from beloved literary characters faded from Samantha's memory, replaced by recipes and lines from children's textbooks. Matt grew into a bright and inquisitive boy. An excellent student, he still found time to help his parents. From his father, he inherited a love of hard work and perseverance. From his mother, an excellent memory and the ability to empathize with the world, books and people. Anita, on the contrary, was capricious. She fought with classmates and drew moustaches on portraits in textbooks. Yet the girl's academic performance was only slightly worse than her brother's, and thanks to her sharp tongue and strong character, her peers quickly learned not to cross her. "Daddy's girl," Neil would joke, showing his daughter how to clench her fists properly. The news of her husband's death struck Samantha like a sledgehammer. Industrial accident. Her husband's co-worker and shift supervisor reported over the phone. Neil had died instantly due to his co-worker's negligence and inattention. He had tripped over a carelessly discarded tool, and his hand had accidentally struck one of the machines. The incident caused an uproar. Local journalists clamoured to report on the tragedy. Management and experts descended upon the factory. The police opened a criminal investigation, but nothing could alter the fact of Neil's death. The family was left without its breadwinner, the wife became a widow, and a shadow seemed to fall over Samantha after these events. Shortly before his death, Neil had purchased a new spacious SUV on credit. Samantha made a few payments from their family savings, but soon sold the car to settle her late husband's debt. The unpleasant surprises didn't end there. It emerged that Neil had been an avid gambler. He had spent a significant portion of their money, and when he ran out of funds to bet, he had taken out loans and borrowed from colleagues and acquaintances. Samantha refused to believe these stories for a long time, but when she began receiving calls from debt collectors demanding loan payments, she had no choice but to accept the truth. "Oh, what a mess your husband's left," Samantha's mother complained, waving her hands in the air. "Mum, don't speak ill of the dead," Samantha tried to calm her. "I don't care." The woman put her hands on her hips and shook her head. "And how well he disguised it, the scoundrel! Everything for the family, everything for the house, and everything was a lie. Who would have thought it?" Samantha sighed. Her mother was right, though it was unpleasant to admit. To everyone around him, Neil had appeared to be an accomplished man, but in reality, he had suffered from a painful addiction, from which he sought refuge in endless work. The family's funds were dwindling, while expenses remained constant. 6 months later, Samantha made the only decision she could: to sell the house, pay off her husband's debts, and move with the children to a smaller apartment in the city. They found buyers quickly, and the deal was soon completed. Living in a 2-bedroom apartment after their spacious house took some adjustment for the three of them. However, it solved some of their problems. The children enrolled in a new school, and Samantha realised she would have to find work to put food on the table and pay the rent. But where could a 40-year-old woman find employment with no recent work experience and a theatre school diploma from more than a decade ago? The answer eluded her as she wandered the city streets. Initially, Samantha tried working at the market, but she wasn't prepared for the rudeness of customers or the physical demands of hauling boxes of goods. Tactful, well-read and gentle Samantha was sent home on her first day by the stall owner, who told her, "You belong in a library, not in trade." There was no time for self-pity, so Samantha tried again. She took a job as a mail carrier. At first, things went smoothly. She delivered letters and newspapers while listening to audiobooks. She returned home before dark and had little to complain about. However, when Samantha received her first paycheck, she was crestfallen. The money barely covered utilities and necessities. "Don't worry, Mum. Something better will come along," Matt and Anita consoled her. "We can work after school too, handing out flyers or walking dogs." "No, no," Samantha protested, waving her hands. "You need to focus on your studies. I'll manage somehow." She hugged her children tightly as they exchanged secret glances. Of course, neither Matt nor Anita intended to neglect their studies, but they couldn't bear to watch their mother struggle to support the three of them on a pittance. So, unbeknownst to their mother, the siblings began to work part-time jobs. Samantha left the courier job, deciding that her new job would be hard but at least profitable. Then she was hired as a dishwasher in a restaurant, where she spent 10 to 12 hours a day washing glasses and plates. She'd return home utterly exhausted, sometimes falling asleep on a stool with her evening tea. After a month, Samantha's hands were covered in wounds, her fingers ached, and her skin dried out from constant glove wearing and harsh detergents. Her back began to protest, with sharp pains in her shoulder blades and knees. "Mum, why don't we look for something else? You're sacrificing your health at that sink," her children pleaded. "It pays well," Samantha objected, though she knew Matt and Anita were right. Fate, however, had other plans. During a busy shift, Samantha accidentally flooded the restaurant's kitchen. She'd gone to the back room for new sponges and rags, forgetting to turn off the water. It gushed from the sink onto the floor, shorting out the freezer's wiring and an outlet. The room filled with the smell of burning electronics as something sparked and popped. The restaurant's administrator and chief severely reprimanded Samantha, withheld her pay for the shift, and told her not to return. Wiping away tears, Samantha hurried home. She began interviewing for new positions. A nursing home rejected her due to lack of medical training. At a pet store, she couldn't bring herself to clean the snake enclosures, making her unsuitable for the job. Some places deemed her too old, others cited her lack of relevant experience, and some simply didn't like her appearance. "Our firm prioritizes image," sniffed the owner of a wedding dress salon, eyeing Samantha's worn blouse. "I'm afraid you'd be a problem in that regard." Samantha left the bridal store, her head bowed. She was becoming accustomed to rejection, having heard so many refusals recently. Wrapping her scarf tighter and pulling on her knitted gloves, she waited for the bus, shifting from foot to foot under the shelter. "Mr. Rene, I quit," declared the housekeeper, hastily packing her belongings. Damon stood bewildered in the hallway, watching the frustrating scene unfold. "Claire, won't you reconsider? You're the third housekeeper over the last months. Has Ali driven you away too?" "I'm sorry, but no," the woman said, donning her coat. "Even Abraham Lincoln himself couldn't handle such a troublesome child, let alone a frail, elderly retired teacher like me." Damon sighed, rubbing his neck nervously. Ali had managed to alienate even those the agency recommended as most resilient to childish pranks. "Have a nice day." The former employee gave a curt nod and left, slamming the door. Damon massaged the bridge of his nose. "I must do something about my daughter, or we'll run out of competent housekeepers in the city. Gossip spreads faster than ripples on a pond. Wendy won't touch housework. I don't have the time, and Ali is hopeless. What shall I do?" "+1 in the piggy bank," Ali said from above, sitting on the floor and dangling her feet between the stair railing. "And you think that's something to be proud of?" Damon turned to his daughter. "No," Ali mused, her eyes drifting to the ceiling. "I'd be proud if she had run away on the first day, losing her slippers. This one lasted almost a month. Come on, Dad, hire a new girl. I'll set records with her." "You shouldn't hit children. You shouldn't hit children," Damon muttered, pressing his fingers to his temples. 15-year-old Ali had an angelic appearance, but a devilish temperament. Her favourite pastime was testing others' patience, especially her teachers and the household staff. As a spoiled daughter of wealthy parents, Ali believed money could solve any problem, giving her free rein to misbehave. She'd plant love letters from the young maid to the gardener, and vice versa, laughing as she watched her matchmaking unfold. Her pranks escalated when she planted a note from the gardener to her mother. Wendy didn't appreciate the humour and scolded the gardener for his foolishness. Bored with letter writing, Ali began scaring the staff, tying fishing lines to doors for quick pranks, tossing rubber bats and spiders into laundry piles, hiding phones in vents, playing eerie sounds. Unsurprisingly, the workers couldn't endure such treatment for long. They'd flee, some with greying hair, others with newfound stutters, and some red-faced with shame. Damon tried to reason with his daughter about the importance of household help, but the troublemaker couldn't care less. If her father raised his voice, Ali would run crying to her mother. "Wendy, no one wants to work for us anymore. Even offering higher pay didn't help.
Damon complained to his wife. "Oh, please." Wendy wrinkled her nose. "These agencies are just greedy. Look for someone independent. Maybe a recent immigrant or a forgetful grandmother." "Perfect." Ali clapped her hands. "I'll pretend to be twins. Grandma will think she's losing her mind." "What kind of talk is that?" Damon grabbed his daughter's sweater. "Mummy, Dad is hurting me," Ali immediately wailed. "Let go of her, Damon," Wendy sighed, rolling her eyes. "You'd do better to find her a math tutor." "Easier said than done," Damon grumbled, releasing his daughter. Ali promptly hid behind her mother, sticking her tongue out at her father. Damon and Wendy were busy professionals. Damon managed a local branch of a large bank, while Wendy owned a chain of trendy clothing stores. They lived in a spacious 2-story house with a garden and swimming pool. Naturally, the couple had no time for household chores, preferring to hire a maid, cook, and gardener rather than manage everything themselves. Ali had spent much of her childhood with nannies, and it was then she realised how sophisticated it was to torment people for her own amusement. Other children had more conventional hobbies: dolls, rubber bands, drawing. Ali, however, unscrewed plastic Barbies' heads and delighted in putting them in the soup pot, savouring the family's squeals and facial expressions at dinner. Instead of playing with a jump rope, the little bully bought silicone worm baits at the fishing store. These worms long annoyed the maids and cooks, ending up in compote, coffee cups or bags. Ali didn't give up her habits at school, which ensured her classmates' adoration. It was no problem for her to alter a grade in the journal or disrupt lessons in various ways, using paraffin-coated chalk that wouldn't wipe off, making the floor slippery with the same paraffin, stealing a skull from the biology room's skeleton, or mixing up first graders' shoes at gym. By 8th grade, the headmaster himself was keeping out of Ali's antics. Despite this, the prankster managed to study well and even win some school competitions. Only recently had Ali fallen behind in mathematics. She couldn't grasp new topics. Stubborn, she threw her textbooks in the corner. Tutors fled from her faster than one could write homework. "Still, you should concern yourself with this matter. Isn't it a shame that your daughter is getting C's when you count money all day long?" Wendy raised an eyebrow shrewdly. All right. Damon waved his hands. "I don't know which problem to grab first, a tutor or a housekeeper." "Grab both at once," his wife advised, and dashed out the door waving goodbye to her family. "Both, then," muttered Damon on his way to the laptop. "Well, let's try. Once again." Samantha was figuring out how to pay for utilities with the rate hike and heating increase. She feverishly flipped through job ads. It turned into an endless series of searches, becoming a nervous and painful habit.
Nanny, cafe cleaner, delivery Samantha muttered, spinning the mouse wheel with her index finger. "Mum, can you help me?" her daughter asked, coming into the room with a piece of paper in her hands and pulling her mum out of her heavy musings. "Can't Matt help with this lesson?" Samantha smiled tiredly, turning toward Anita. He's at a friend's. They're preparing a social studies essay," Anita replied, muffled and confused. She didn't want to give away her brother, who worked part-time at a fast food joint after school. "We were asked to prepare a report on a relative with an unusual fate or profession, so I thought, why not tell about great-grandfather Alfred? Wasn't he a regimental doctor who treated soldiers during World War I?" Anita explained. "A wonderful idea," Samantha praised her daughter. "Wait a minute, I even have pictures of him with our grandfather somewhere. I'll look for them now." The woman got up and went out onto the balcony. There, in a tall built-in closet, she kept everything that didn't fit in the apartment. Old dishes, shoes and clothes, rare documents, sleds, glass jars of different sizes, and photo albums. Samantha sat down on a creaky stool next to the closet, and blew the dust off a well-worn album in a red binding. "Here it is, your great-grandfather and my grandfather Alfred." She showed her daughter a photograph with curled edges. The photo depicted a stately man in a white coat surrounded by soldiers holding a medical case. Anita looked at the photo with interest. Samantha found more memorable photos and told her daughter about the challenging work of doctors in the early 20th century. They talked like that for about half an hour. "Thank you, Mum," Anita thanked her mother enthusiastically. "Tomorrow I'll surprise the whole class with my knowledge." Samantha watched her daughter, who bounded into the room, holding the thick album. Suddenly, a more modern photograph fell out, accidentally mixed in among the century-old shots. Samantha looked at the floor in surprise, squatted down and picked up the picture. A laughing boy with dark curls gazed at her, holding a melting ice cream on a stick. His white t-shirt was stained with the same ice cream. Samantha smiled and ran her hand over the picture. She remembered that hot May day. They had gone for a walk around the city after the annual grades were posted, fed pigeons with seeds, and then he had bought an ice cream, half of which had immediately plopped onto the pavement. The birds pecked at the treat, and they both laughed loudly. How fortunate that she had her old camera with her at the time. It was an old film camera, but how precious the photos she took with it turned out to be. Damon was a year older, the head of the parallel class, handsome. He was the first to approach her, and everything changed. Their whirlwind school romance intoxicated them both. Those around them didn't doubt that Damon and Samantha would marry. The young couple seemed perfect for each other. They were together for 2 years, meeting the dawn at the graduation party, wanting to enter the same college. But Damon's mother had different plans for her son's future. The woman didn't want to see her son marry a simpleton from a poor family, let alone a future artist. She thought marriage at such an early age would spoil her son's career. After all, his father had already secured a position for him. He just needed the right education. So Damon was sent to study at a prestigious university in the capital, away from his dangerous love. He simply disappeared, leaving no phone number or address. Neil once found a photo of his wife with her former school love and demanded she get rid of them. Samantha, holding back tears, shredded the picture with scissors. But it turned out this picture had survived, and now it stirred up a storm of old feelings in her soul. For a moment it seemed to Samantha that those 2 decades had never happened. It was as if her marriage to Neil didn't exist. If only yesterday she and Damon had eaten ice cream, and outside the window was blooming May, not cold November. "Mum, why are you sitting on the floor?" Anita looked into the balcony. "You'll catch cold. Let's go inside." Samantha awoke from a languid memory. She found herself sitting on the carpet by the stool, reverently clutching the photograph she had discovered. "We're out of salt. I'll go get some now," her daughter announced. No, Samantha interjected. "I'll go myself. You focus on your homework. Don't get distracted." She hastily donned her jacket, grabbed her purse, slipped on her shoes and hurried outside. Samantha hoped the wind would blow the memories from her mind. It was impossible to dwell on the past now. The present demanded her endurance. The small corner store's windows twinkled with garlands. Samantha frequented it for sundries and had befriended the amiable saleswoman, Melora. "I won't go back to that girl for any amount of money," a customer complained to the store owner. "My nerves aren't made of steel. Let some other lunatic find another lunatic willing to work there." Samantha inadvertently overheard this impassioned exchange. "Well, Claire, I think you should have stayed," Melora remarked authoritatively, slicing sausage behind the counter. "I'd rather be warm, well paid and close to home, even if it means putting up with the little rascal. I'd sooner work as a loader than spend another day in that house. My blood pressure's already through the roof from her antics," the customer retorted, taking her sausage
and counting out bills. "I'll be back for cookies tomorrow." "Take care, Claire." Melora bid farewell, then turned to Samantha. "Hi, what can I get you?" Samantha pointed to a packet of salt, then hesitantly inquired, "What's the story with that customer's job?" "Oh, that's Claire. She worked as a housekeeper for a wealthy family nearby. The owner's daughter drove her out with her pranks." The saleswoman readily explained. "Why do you ask?" Samantha realized she had nothing to lose, and it would be foolish not to try. "I'm looking for work. From what I heard, the place doesn't sound too bad." Melora looked at her in surprise. "And I can handle any child," Samantha added, responding to the unasked question. "How brave you are," the saleswoman grinned good-naturedly. "All right, I'll write down the address for you." As the shopkeeper rummaged under the counter for a notebook and pencil, Samantha felt her mind suddenly clear of its heavy thoughts. A ray of hope shone through, like the sun emerging after a night storm in the early morning. Samantha clutched the paper with the address, her hands trembling slightly. Though hardened by numerous job interviews, she still felt nervous, a lump forming in her chest. For about 10 minutes, she hesitated at the gate of a private house in an affluent neighbourhood. It was only a 15-minute walk from her apartment. The house filled Samantha with awe-inspiring wonder. Panoramic windows, a vast glazed veranda, marble tiles, elegant wrought iron fence bars, and exotic plants sculpted into various shapes, all dusted with the first November snow. Samantha's fingers hovered over the doorbell several times, retreating each time she mustered courage to press it. Just as Samantha finally steeled herself, a black car pulled up to the gate. She turned around, startled. "May I help you?" A man in a crisp suit and coat lowered the driver's window. "Yes, I'm looking for the housekeeper position," Samantha replied hesitantly. "Then you're in the right place." The man smiled. "Just a moment." The gate slowly swung inward, and the sleek car glided into the yard, its tyres crunching softly on the snow. Moments later, the master of the house himself opened the gate from the inside. "Are you from the agency? We didn't receive a call about an interview," the man inquired. "I'm Mr. Rennert. And you are?" Samantha gazed at her interlocutor from beneath her lashes, puzzled by her racing heart. Was it excitement, or some lingering feeling from the past? Samara, Samantha lied, unsure why. "I'm not from an agency. I heard through acquaintances that you're looking for a housekeeper." "Excellent," Damon beamed. "That's even better." They approached the porch and climbed the marble-tiled steps to the front door. "Samara, we're not asking for anything extraordinary," Damon said, courteously opening the door. "You'll need to clean the house a couple of times a week and cook for the family. How are your culinary skills, by the way?" "No complaints so far," Samantha replied, surveying the high-ceilinged hallway and winding staircase with interest. "Soups, main courses, salads, pies, cakes. I can do it all." "Splendid!" Damon gestured toward the slippers in the shoe rack. "There are 3 of us, my wife, daughter and me. As you can see, we're short on time for household chores, so these important tasks will be your responsibility. Can you handle that?" "I believe so," Samantha said, obediently slipping on the shoes and following Damon into the kitchen. As they walked, Samantha struggled to understand her own reactions. Her cheeks flushed, her heart raced. The suspicion that had formed during their first encounter on the street grew stronger. "It can't be, and I'm being foolish. There's no such thing as coincidence. Or is there?" The thoughts battled stubbornly in her mind. "All the cleaning supplies are in the closet behind the kitchen. If you run out of anything, let me know, and I'll restock." Damon continued the tour. "There's a 2-week menu in the kitchen, but you don't have to follow it strictly. The main thing is to serve breakfast on time. You'll work weekdays, with payment twice a month in cash. If you agree, you can start tomorrow."
Yes, I agree, Samantha nodded.
Oh, Samara, he said, carefully choosing his words. Our daughter Allie. She's not an easy child. If you have any misunderstandings, tell me at once.
All right, Mr. Rennett, Samantha nodded, watching the man as he left. She was still unsure if her suspicions were correct. After all, it had been so long. And if it was really him, he didn't recognize her. Or did he? Did he not remember what happened between them? So many questions flooded her mind at once. Forget it, Samantha, she ordered to herself. He's married anyway, and apparently happy. Why would he need to remember his past with poor, unattractive widow and single mother? The work was easier than Samantha had anticipated. She would arrive at the family home at 8 a.m, cook breakfast for everyone, clear the table, tidy up and clean. Lunch stretched over a couple of hours because the household members came at different times. After dinner and clearing the table, Samantha was usually free by 6 p.m. She had little time left for her own house and children, but there was plenty of money. Anita and Matt tried to be independent. They could cook simple meals, iron and do laundry, allowing their mother to rest after work. Sometimes Samantha would sit on the sofa between them, put her arms around them, and pull her son and daughter close. How lucky I am to have you, she would say, kissing the top of each one's head. With such children, nothing is scary, and whatever is scary will survive somehow. Allie didn't take Samantha seriously. Wendy was also cold and curt with Samantha, seeming to dislike her from the first day of work. Samantha continued to suppress the lingering memories that swelled in her chest, but her thoughts wouldn't cooperate. She furtively glanced at Damon when he passed by or was near. At such moments, Samantha wondered if it was truly him, but she was afraid to ask. He obviously didn't recognize her. How could he, when Samantha had given a different name? Damon had introduced her to Wendy and Allie as Samara. It was too late to turn back now. From the first day of Samantha's employment, Allie attempted cruel pranks, unplugging the vacuum cleaner mid-cleaning, knocking over the pepper shaker into the soup, hiding the maid's bag so the whole house had to search for it. Samantha was never bored, as she had to keep an eye on the mischievous girl who seemed determined to provoke her, in addition to her household duties. One ordinary workday in the middle of the week, Samantha was dusting the bookshelves in the living room when she heard a shout from upstairs, followed by harsh words and angry footsteps stomping down the stairs. Wendy burst into the room, a towel on her head and wearing a housecoat. "Samara!" The mistress of the house called in a raised tone. "Did you iron my Italian blouse?" "Yes," Samantha replied, confused, looking at the garment in Wendy's hands. "You will pay for it out of your paycheck." The angry hostess threw the blouse in Samantha's face. "And do me a favour. Don't touch my clothes again." Wendy turned and stormed back to the second floor, leaving a bewildered Samantha standing in the middle of the living room with the blouse in her hands. Upon examination, she noticed an ugly yellowish iron mark on the back. Samantha remembered steaming the garment the day before and putting it away in Wendy's walk-in closet. She definitely hadn't touched it with the iron, but it was too late to explain. "I never liked that stupid blouse," Allie giggled, appearing suddenly from around the corner. Samantha glanced at her. "I don't like you either," Allie yawned. "You cut the tomatoes in the salad too large. You move things around so no one can find anything. Your coffee is disgusting." Samantha felt a lump rise in her throat. Her face grew hot. "But I'm not complaining, because you're the first person who won't fall for my jokes. It's a real challenge, and I don't like to lose." Allie spun on her heels and disappeared around the corner as suddenly as she had appeared. Samantha tried to suppress the urge to cry. "The ugly girl won't get a single tear," she told herself as she paced back and forth across the room. She drank a glass of water and took a deep breath. After calming down, she scrutinized the iron stain again, ran her fingernail over it, remembered something and smiled. She folded the blouse and carefully tucked it into her own bag. Samantha decided not to tell Damon about Ali's prank, especially since she had a plan to fix it. Once, in her childhood, her mother had burned a silk handkerchief with an iron, and Samantha never thought she would remember that story with gratitude. Damon was always friendly with her, unlike his wife and daughter. He asked if she had enough time for her family, never nagged, and sometimes even shared stories from his daily life. Samantha couldn't tell whether this friendliness was merely professional or if Damon genuinely enjoyed talking to her. Still, the name Samara grated on her ears. She had to get used to it, having not thought of a clear explanation for why she had lied about her name. By the end of December, no one thinks about studying. Everyone wants to sit down at the festive table, eat turkey, look for presents under the tree, and leave all troubles in the past. Samantha was putting dishes away in the kitchen cabinet when she heard a commotion from the hallway.
"I'll give you a present. You'll be studying all holidays," rumbled the formerly calm Damon.
"I won't," Ali snapped back, though very uncertainly.
"I'll throw this algebra in the trash."
"The real trash is your mouth." Damon looked at his daughter, who instinctively hid behind her mother.
"Damon, stop it!" Wendy yanked him. "There's no need to yell like that over an ordinary D. We'll find a good tutor, or speak with the teacher, and that's it. Problem solved." "No, it's not solved." Damon grabbed Ali's arm.
"Damon, stop yelling at the child." Wendy folded her arms across her chest.
"Especially in front of strangers."
The man turned around and spotted Samantha, who was timidly peering out of the doorway into the kitchen.
"I've had my say. No presents and no vacations. Let her try to sneak away or slack off."
Damon muttered one last time and looked at Ali meaningfully. She wrinkled her nose and waited until her father was out of sight, then pulled her algebra textbook out of her backpack and threw it through the open door into the street. Wendy didn't react, only sighed tiredly and hurriedly began to answer a work call. Ali was left standing in the hallway alone. Samantha, hearing everything from around the corner, suddenly realized the teenager's tragedy. It was so obvious, yet unclear, that she wanted to immediately run after her parents and tell them everything. But Samantha did otherwise. "Do you want me to help with math?" Samantha reached out her hand to the girl, conciliatorily. Ali stared glumly at the housekeeper. "No, I still won't learn it, despite my father. I won't. That's all." She kicked the backpack once more vigorously. "I have a son a little older than you. I often did homework with him, and I remember some things," Samantha continued. "Why do you need this? To show off in front of your employers?" Ali stared at Samantha incredulously. "What if I just want to help?" Samantha squatted down to be at Ali's eye level. "I've done so many nasty things to you, and you want to help. That's not how it works." "Let's try it, and then you'll see if it happens or not. All right?" Samantha extended her hand to the girl. Ali contemplated the woman's palm for a while, then nodded incredulously. "Okay, but only to test your knowledge, not for the sake of math." "Okay," Samantha smiled. "Then I'll come by after dinner, and we'll try to figure it out together." Toward evening, when everyone had gone to their rooms and Samantha had cleared the table, Ali came down with the book, a notebook and a pen. She had a look of defiance on her face. It was unclear to whom or what. To the system, to her parents, to herself. Samantha hastily wiped her hands on her apron and gestured for the girl to sit down at the table. She sat down without taking her eyes off the housekeeper. Samantha quickly realized that Ali's algebra problems were more far-fetched than real. She wasn't at all as stupid as she tried to appear. She was more stubborn, posturing or acting out. "Great," she praised the girl. "Now connect the dots, and we'll get a parabola."
It's hilarious because I used to connect dots with numbers in kindergarten, exclaimed Ali, looking at the sheet where she had just calculated the function table and plotted the graph. But I even liked it. Let's do another problem like this, shall we? You can already do it yourself, and I'll help to check it. Samantha turned the page in the textbook. This one's harder. Ali made a familiar expression, but the woman looked at her shrewdly and smiled slightly. All right, I'll try, the girl muttered, and started drawing a new coordinate plane in her notebook. But why do I need all this in my life? You'll become a publisher of colouring books for toddlers. Samantha grinned good-naturedly. Ali snorted in response, but began to solve the problem. The class lasted 2 hours. Samantha was already sleepy, but she patiently explained and showed the impromptu student how to solve various equations and extract square roots. You're not like our former housekeepers, Ali said at the end. You behave differently, simpler or something. I didn't understand anything about stupid letter numbers, and you've explained it better than our mathematician. Thank you, but I'm afraid I don't remember the material well enough to help you any further. Samantha ran her finger over the next topic in the paragraph. Ali looked at her with some disappointment. But my son remembers everything perfectly well. If you don't mind, I think he could help you. If he explains as well as you do, then I agree, Ali replied. I'll tell Dad. She got up from her chair and started for her room. I apologise for my pranks and the words. I wasn't offended at all. Samantha nodded easily. By the way, please return Mum's blouse. The woman pulled a folded picklock bag and held it out to the girl. Ali blushed crimson, took the bundle and quickly dashed up the stairs. Matt enthusiastically accepted his mother's request. He often helped less diligent classmates and willingly agreed to tutor his mother's employer's daughter. The next step was to discuss the matter with Damon and Wendy. Samantha pondered this as she rushed to work the following day. Have you started finding a tutor for Ali yet? Wendy asked her husband, meticulously cutting the egg on her plate. Actually, I've already arranged it. An associate professor of mathematical analysis from our university can come 3 times a week. Wendy, she needs to learn school-level algebra, not the theory of relativity. Why such overkill? Damon sipped coffee from his cup. Because such a person has the proper knowledge and professionalism, Wendy retorted. If we experience this issue, we can afford the best specialist. Hey, did anyone bother to ask me? An indignant Ali appeared in the dining room. I don't want your professor. Besides, Samara explained everything perfectly and promised her son would help me too. 3 pairs of eyes, amazed, indignant, and seeking support, simultaneously fixed on Samantha, who had just entered the room carrying a sugar bowl. You've been tutoring Ali? Damon shifted his gaze from his daughter to the maid. Yes, Samantha nodded cautiously. And I solved all the homework by myself, plus 3 extra tasks, Ali boasted immediately. Well, that's fantastic. Damon stood up from the table. We don't need an associate professor if Samara has managed to help our little troublemaker. Hold on a minute. Wendy slammed her palm on the table resolutely. How can someone with no background in pedagogy or mathematics teach anything? But Mum, Ali protested, hands on her hips. I won't accept amateurs. Let her do the work she's paid for. We'll handle our daughter's education ourselves. Wendy emphasized the word work. I'll die of boredom with your professor, Ali grimaced. Wendy, let her study with a peer. It'll be easier for her. Damon sided with his daughter and Samantha. Wendy glared at everyone with an annoyed look. Fine. Why don't we trust the maid the keys to the safe either? Maybe we should also invite her to your mother's birthday party, she said caustically. Suddenly, Samantha understood why Wendy had treated her like furniture from the beginning. She was jealous. The thought seemed absurd, yet so clear. Wendy sensed something amiss. All women can do that, an inexplicable feeling of unease, without any apparent reason. Damon stared at his wife in amazement. Ali's gift shifted between her parents. Then Wendy abruptly jumped up from her chair and, muttering indignantly under her breath, stormed out of the dining room. As she passed, she elbowed Samantha, causing the glass sugar bowl to slip from her hands and shatter deafeningly on the floor. Moments later, the front door slammed as an angry Wendy left for business at one of her stores. How embarrassing. Damon rushed to help Samantha pick up the shards. Samantha, I'm so sorry. It's okay, these things happen. No need to apologise. Samantha carefully scanned the floor for transparent pieces of the sugar bowl. Ouch! She realised she had stepped on one. The sharp edge pierced through the soft felt of her slipper and into her foot. Samantha balanced on one leg, wincing in pain. Damon quickly took her arm to support her. Sit down, there's a first aid kit in the closet. The man carefully guided Samantha around the splinters to the sofa in the kitchen. Over his shoulder, he called to his daughter, Ali, stay out of here. I don't want you cutting yourself too. After ensuring Samantha was safe, Damon turned to Samantha. Take off your sock. I'll apply a sterile bandage. Damon instructed, already retrieving bandages and plasters. He took a pair of tweezers, sterilised them in his hands with antiseptic, then crouched in front of Samantha and asked, I'm going to pull it out now. It's going to hurt. Can you bear with it? The woman nodded and squeezed her eyes shut. Her foot stung as if electrocuted, while Samantha was frozen with a sudden memory. She's 14. It's a hot summer day. She and her mum had just bought new sandals. Samantha immediately wore them for a walk with her friends. She hurries to the bus stop, not wanting to wait another 10 minutes for the next one. Suddenly she trips and falls, scraping her knee and feeling a burning pain on the back of her foot. An iron pin from a bench leg had caught her sandal strap, leaving a lifelong scar. Why don't I cover it with a tattoo? It's fashionable now, Samantha said to Damon a few years later, tracing the scar with her finger. No need. Damon, now 17, looked at her lovingly. It's what makes you unique. Samara, I pulled out the piece. I'm going to put a bandage on it now. Samantha froze, watching Damon bend down and bandage her wounded foot with trembling hands. Samantha watched him almost breathlessly. There was no way he could not have noticed her scar. All done, Damon said, tightening the bandage knots before hastily turning to the sink to wash his hands. Samantha tried to squeeze out at least a thank you, but lingering uncertainty robbed her of her voice. I've been wondering, are you or aren't you? All this time, every day. Damon's voice shattered her reverie. Hello, Samantha. Love at 18? What nonsense. Mrs. Rennert looked sternly at her son. The reason for the quarrel remained the same, Damon's girlfriend. You, a boy from a well-to-do family with an impeccable future and a solid inheritance. Who is she? The daughter of a saleswoman and a cab driver who wants to be an actress? Don't even think about it, the mother threatened. For 2 years of his relationship with Samantha, Damon had endured these lectures. Now his parents offered him a choice. Stay with his beloved girl, but start from scratch and achieve everything in life independently, or sacrifice his personal life, study in the capital, and then immediately work at his father's bank. Damon agonized over the decision until the end of the summer after graduation, carefully hiding his worries from Samantha. In the end, he couldn't go against his family. He deleted the girl's number, discarded and burned everything that could remind him of the school romance, and left for his studies with a heavy heart. After completing his education, Damon began building a career in banking. Thanks to his father's connections and influence, the young man quickly climbed the career ladder. He didn't form lasting relationships, though brief encounters occurred. Damon decided to immerse himself in his studies and later work to numb the conscience and pain that tormented him. But even here, his mother intervened. At a family gathering, she introduced him to her friend's daughter, Wendy, who had just started a clothing business. The young people talked under the approving glances of their mothers, who had already decided everything. 6 months later, Wendy and Damon married. The celebration was lavish, and exactly 9 months later, Wendy gave birth to a girl named Allie. That's how it was. Damon finished his story, holding his now cold mug of tea. Forgive me. I lost my nerve back then. If you want to leave now and never come back, just as I did, I'll understand. We've grown up, Damon. You're a successful family man, and I'm a widow with 2 children, Samantha said, rocking her mug on the table. Why dwell on the past? It was surprising that they had been tormented for almost a month by the same feelings and vague speculations, but in the intervening years, both had changed considerably in appearance. Damon had aged, grown a beard and acquired a pleasant baritone. Samantha had long since abandoned her bangs, freckles and blonde braid. She now dyed her hair brown and wore contact lenses instead of glasses, changing her eye colour from green to blue. I'm not going to leave. I need this job. And I found common ground with Allie. Matt's coming to study with her today. By the way, may he? Samantha asked. Of course. Why do you even ask? Damon replied, flustered. All right. Samantha glanced around the kitchen. I should probably get back to work and prepare dinner. Your wife won't like it if she comes home to find us here, drinking tea and chatting. No, I suppose she wouldn't, Damon agreed. He took the mugs, rinsed them thoroughly under the tap, and placed them on the drying rack. A wave of memories washed over them both, tugging at their hearts and souls. Samantha barely maintained her composure, though she longed to embrace this man, as she had at their high school graduation. Damon deliberately prolonged washing the mug, trying to organise his thoughts. His conscience surged, dredging up shame, powerlessness, and self-resentment from the depths of his youth. All this mingled with the warmth and vividness of today's meeting, blurring the years spent apart into a grey haze. A week passed. For Samantha, work had become a roller coaster, swinging her up and down, then abruptly bringing her back to earth. Maintaining the professional boundaries that existed before the unfortunate broken sugar bowl incident proved impossible. Damon seized every opportunity to be near her, to talk, to look into her eyes, and Samantha struggled internally. Part of her trembled at his every word, while another part pressed down with the weight of morality. Matt and Allie bonded quickly. The former troublemaker's algebra grades began to improve. Why former? Because Allie abandoned her pranks and jokes as soon as the disciplined, open, and calm Matt appeared. The young people soon began taking walks after classes. Noticing her son's fatigue from such busy days, Samantha once asked, Matt, why do you rush to Allie's every day? You should stay home sometimes and rest. Mum, she asks me to study with her daily. I don't want to break your trust. Besides, the son hesitated awkwardly. What is it? Samantha asked, while arranging freshly washed utensils in a kitchen drawer. Well, Matt drawled, I think I like her. Who? That troublemaker? Samantha was genuinely surprised, but quickly rationalised. Though I suppose opposites do attract. She's not a troublemaker at all, Matt defended his friend. Allie told me many things. She did it all to get her mum's attention. She didn't mean any harm. And she has no real friends. Everyone at school only hangs out with her for money because her parents are rich. And she told you all this? Samantha asked, surprised again. Her son confirmed her speculation. Children always act when they want attention, but while at 7 it's tantrums in stores or drawing on apartment walls, at 15 it becomes planned, multi-layered mischief. Yes, it turns out she likes reading novels, collects Japanese cat figurines, and listens to the same music as me, Matt continued. Samantha couldn't help but laugh. She never imagined that Allie, who wore jeans and baggy sweatshirts, was a fan of sentimental love stories. When cleaning her room, Samantha had never found any books or cute toys. All right, Samantha waved her hand good-naturedly. Since everything worked out for you so well, let it go. Thanks, Mum. I couldn't have done it without your permission. Matt jumped up from his chair and gave his mother a theatrical bow to the floor. Loud laughter erupted in the kitchen once again. Samantha was so amused by her son that tears of laughter came to her eyes. Things could have turned out differently. You might have been the son of an actress, not a housekeeper, Samantha said affectionately, ruffling Matt's hair. Come on, Mum. The boy put his arm around the woman. I'm sure if you go for that audition, you'll definitely get the lead role. What a flatterer I've raised, Samantha laughed again. Oh, look at the time. It's time to go to bed. I have to get up early tomorrow. Matt disappeared around the corner in the corridor, and his mother muttered quietly, Things could have turned out differently. Since the truth came out, work had become both torment and pleasure for Samantha. Damon smiled at her every day, but Wendy began to eye her like a wolf and nag her more than usual. She reprimanded Samantha for imperfectly cleaned floors, microscopic wrinkles in the ironed laundry, and breadcrumbs on the table that Samantha hadn't had time to clean up immediately. Wendy, why are you picking on Samara? Damon sometimes interceded. You'll make her quit, and we'll have to look for a new housekeeper. I don't like her, Wendy hissed. She only pretends to be kind. I've seen her type before. First she settles in, and then she steals things from the shelves. And she's brought her son, that little rat. Stop it. Damon raised his voice at his wife. Samara works hard enough for 3 people, tolerates your groundless nagging, and helps our daughter without compensation. I'd think you are interested in that empty-headed woman, Wendy sneered. And don't you dare berate me, hubby. And don't you dare call her names. Damon clenched the hand resting on the tabletop into a fist. I'll figure out for myself what I can and can't do in my own house, Wendy snapped, storming off into the other room. Damon sank back into his chair. The more he thought about Samantha, the more his wife irritated him. Wendy had always been characterized by her pedantry, commanding temperament, and stubbornness. Such qualities helped her run the business, but made her a thorn in the family's side. Wendy had handed their daughter to nannies almost as soon as she was born, and later to caretakers and teachers. She was interested only in pressing issues in the child's life. Was she fed, dressed, healthy? What toys to buy? What grades did the teacher give for tests? Why had Damon married her, after all? Because all his other love interests hadn't found approval according to his mother. In the end, the man himself had given up, and even began to look for confirmation of his mother's words. The head of the family was torn from his thoughts by the sound of a mail notification on his smartphone. Damon scanned the work email and began to look for his laptop. He soon remembered that he had left the device in the kitchen. The laptop was lying at the far end of the room on a wide windowsill. Damon picked up the device, but suddenly felt something under his feet. He bent down and picked up an old photograph on which, to his surprise, he saw himself at 18, wearing a large T-shirt stained with ice cream. It was evident that the photo had been carefully preserved, as if someone were afraid to damage it. Damon froze with the photo in his hands in the middle of the kitchen. It was May 30th, and the hot afternoon felt like August. Do you remember? Damon asked Samantha, who had entered the kitchen and looked a little dazed, without taking his eyes off the photo. And the sparrows were chirping in the bushes in the park, she continued, Damon's recollection, leaning her back against the wall beside him. And this stupid ice cream squished on my T-shirt. Currently the picture was taken. The man smiled lightly. Do you remember everything so clearly, either?
Like it was yesterday, when we escaped from class. The woman nodded.
I thought I was the only one, like an idiot, keeping a picture from those years.
You too?
Samantha looked at him in amazement, but didn't remove her hand. Instead of answering, the man opened the laptop. After a few clicks through various folders, there on the screen appeared a scanned picture of Samantha, smiling dazzlingly at the camera with a flower in her hair.
Are you kidding me? The woman leaned closer. You said yourself you got rid of all your memories.
I found it in one of the old notebooks at home when I was already a student, Damon explained.
It's a flower from the school flower bed, Samantha remembered, turning to Damon. He reached for her face, and just as he was about to reach her lips, footsteps were heard on the stairs.
Wendy caught Samantha in the kitchen, diligently rubbing the glass door of the cupboard, and Damon, who rushed out to meet her with a laptop under his arm. Wendy saw her husband off with a stare. Am I imagining things or not? The courtyard and sidewalks were powdered with December snow, falling silently under the light of the street lamps onto roofs, trees, fences, and the noses of passers-by.
Tasty? Ali poked Matt playfully in the back as he stood with his mouth open, catching snowflakes on the fly.
Flavoured with winter adventure. The boy played along, stroking his hand over his stomach, as if he had just gotten up from the table.
With your talent for parody, you should go into theatres, Ali giggled. Matt nodded, but then froze on the spot and said, Listen, Ali, can you help as a friend? Like you helped me in algebra? She asked, squinting slyly.
Yes, Matt confirmed. I can go to the theatre, but I don't need to. However, there's someone who would very much like to perform there. You mentioned your father knows many influential people in town. Perhaps there's a theatre director among them.
Ali scratched her chin thoughtfully. I think there is. In first and second grade, I used to attend performances with my babysitter or my dad. He always greeted this funny, important-looking man. I'm sure he'd remember me if he saw me. I'll discreetly ask my father about their business connections.
Ali, you're a genius,
Matt exclaimed. He happily picked up his friend and spun her around a couple of times before his foot slipped, causing them both to tumble into a small snowdrift. After their laughter subsided and they brushed the snow off their clothes, Ali asked, So, which aspiring actors are we going to help?
My mum, the boy replied. She gave up her theatre career for our family, my sister and me, but she's always secretly dreamed of returning to the stage.
Ali felt silent, realizing that their upcoming adventure wasn't just for fun, but had a deeper, more personal meaning. On Christmas's Eve, Wendy was overwhelmed with issues at her chain of stores. One consultant had quit, a cash register had broken down, and there were problems with the paperwork for a new shipment of goods. Wendy's head was buzzing. She'd spent several days correcting documents and re-entering inventory into the accounting system to appease a persistent tax collector. The documents were ready. All that remained was to print and sign them. Wendy clicked the mouse a couple of times and waited for the sheets to emerge from the printer. Several minutes passed, but the machine remained silent. Wendy glared at the printer, then at her laptop, and checked the connection. Everything seemed correct, but the stubborn machine refused to cooperate. After struggling with the technology for a while longer, she realized she was already late and decided to email the documents to her husband and print them from his laptop. Damon wasn't home. He was working at the office today, though he often worked from home. Wendy found her husband's laptop in his study. She sat down in his chair, opening the lid, and got down to business. Soon the documents were safely sent to print and began crawling out of the machine. While waiting for the printing to finish, Wendy idly browsed through the recently opened files on her husband's computer. Among the reports, lists, and business papers, she came across a picture of a girl with a flower in her hair.
As a well-to-do and intelligent woman, Wendy was comfortable with her husband viewing such content. Especially, there was nothing remarkable about the image. The girl had an average appearance, a provincial grey mouse. Mouse, Wendy mused aloud. Wait, what? She looked more closely at the picture on the screen and realised her own house, only with a different hair colour and younger by several decades. Wendy felt rage boiling up inside her. She considered herself a rigid pragmatist and didn't believe in premonitions or esoteric nonsense, but it was foolish to deny that her instincts hadn't deceived her. Damon had known this woman long before their marriage. So, you've decided to steal my husband from me, mouse. You won't succeed. Wendy almost hissed as she glared at the screen. She erased all traces of her presence on the laptop, took the documents from the printer tray, and left Damon's office. By evening, having returned from the store, Wendy had cooled down, but still wanted to investigate the relationship. She decided to approach it differently. Delicious stew, isn't it, Wendy? Damon praised Samantha's cooking, while she was wiping the mirror in the hallway next to the dining room. For a 3-star canteen, it's adequate, Wendy said, sipping wine from her glass. Damon looked at her perplexed. Are you in a bad mood? Why would you say that? I'm fine, Wendy replied, swirling the glass with her fingers. Suddenly, the glass slipped and shattered on the floor, a red puddle spreading under the table. Wendy stared unblinkingly at her husband. Everything is perfectly fine. She enunciated each word deliberately. Following the glass, a salad bowl fell from the table, splattering chunks of black porcelain. Wendy, what kind of show are you putting on? Damon's tone changed. I could ask the same question, dear husband, Wendy retorted, pushing more plates to the floor. Leave the table, and I'll clean up the splinters so no one gets cut, Damon insisted, trying to prevent further breakage. I'm not going anywhere. Let the one who's only good for this do it. Wendy defiantly dropped a sauce-covered fork. It clattered noisily onto the pile of glass shards. Damon's cheeks flushed, his chest tight with restrained anger at the insult to a woman dear to him. With great effort, he maintained his composure. He stood up and went to fetch a dustpan and rubber gloves. Unlike his spouse, Damon had never shied away from household chores, especially for the sake of loved ones. Don't try to escape, we're not finished yet, Wendy shouted after her husband. I have, he replied without turning around.
Samantha stood motionless in the corridor, overhearing the conversation. Her conscience stung with every word. As Damon passed by glumly, she managed to whisper, barely audibly, I'm sorry. I have to quit. Who am I to ruin their family? They're rich and happy, and I'm just a fool, Samantha thought to herself. That Friday night, she left work early, citing ill health, and decided she wouldn't return on Monday. And what do we say to the theatre director? Ali asked, looking thoughtfully out the bus window. We'll tell the truth, replied Matt, flipping through a page of a history book, that my mother is a talented actress with an unjustly skipped creative life. The theatre doors greeted the school children with old-fashioned luxury, carved wood and coloured glass. Near the ticket office, the observant Matt noticed a man who was chatting with the cashier through the window. The man instantly perked up when he saw the teenagers. What can I do for you, young people? Hello, we'd like to talk to the artistic director of the theatre, Matt replied. The artistic director himself? The man asked, surprised. And on what subject? We want to suggest he consider a talented actress, Matt said undoubtedly. Ah, I see. The man beamed, adjusting his glasses. Then follow me. Mr. Bowman is here right now, discussing the production of a new play with the director. He continued chattering and gesticulating as they walked. You can see the man loves his profession, Matt whispered. The man left them at the entrance to the hall and disappeared behind another pair of heavy, carved doors. A couple of minutes later he emerged. "This way, please." He pulled back the curtain, and the teenagers began to walk down the rows toward the stage. On stage, several actors were rehearsing scenes. In the front row sat two men, seemingly unaware of the surrounding activity. One was thin and long-nosed, wearing glasses and a scarf tied around his neck. The other was short and plump, resembling either Carlson on the Roof or Dennis DeVito. "Mr. Bowman, some young people have come to you with an interesting proposition." "Well, since they've come, let's hear their interesting proposal." The director pointed to a side row where it was quieter. After introductions and greetings, Matt briefly told his mother's story. Mr. Bowman listened, not forgetting to peek at the stage and watch the actors work. "Now she's 40 and thinks she's no longer fit for the theatre, let alone cinema. But that's not true. Mum is talented. Please, let her express herself and return to what she loves," Matt finished. "So, you're suggesting I spend my time on a woman with no acting experience, who last performed on stage about 15 years ago and was too afraid to come herself, sending 2 children instead?" The director twirled a simple ring on his fingers. "Not quite," Matt mused. "Actually, she doesn't even know we're here." "Young man, what kind of drama are you playing out here in place of your mother?" Changing his tone, the artistic director glared at him. "We're not acting out of anything at all," Ali intervened. "But I want to inform you that Samantha is the protégée of Damon Rennert, my father, and a man who has helped this theatre many times. By not giving her a chance, you'll miss out on more than just a wonderful actress." Matt hurriedly closed his dropped jaw. "Ali, you've grown so much. I didn't recognize you, my dear." Mr. Bowman's face instantly changed. "Why didn't you say so earlier? I think Mr. Adkins and I can find an hour to talk to your father's protégé, say next Monday." "That would be fine," Matt nodded, trying to keep a straight face. Mr. Bowman gave him his business card, and showering them with courtesies, escorted the guests all the way out of the theatre. "You really put him in his place," Matt praised Ali. "Of course, that's how my mother talks to her subordinates," she grumbled. "I'll write down the number of this theatrical Carlson." Rummaging in his pockets, Matt muttered. He pulled out his phone and, looking at the screen, turned pale. "What? What's wrong?" a worried Ali asked. "There are 7 missed calls from Mum," Matt replied. "I'm an idiot. I turned the sound off on the bus." That Saturday morning, Samantha didn't want to be sad or dwell on what had happened the day before. She saw the children off, Anita to a volleyball competition between schools and Matt to extra classes. "Mum, don't cook dinner, I'll be late," shouted the boy from the doorstep. "First it's don't cook, Mum, and then they eat pies from stalls," Samantha muttered, watching the children from the window. Wanting to busy herself with chores, she started cleaning and decided to cook stuffed cabbage for dinner. This dish was a family favourite and didn't often appear on their table. "Who says you can only eat delicious things on holidays?" the woman said to herself as she chopped onions and grated carrots for the stuffing. Samantha boiled water to scald the cabbage. She went to the fridge to get the vegetable and saw that it was rotten. The woman cursed at herself, then looked around hurriedly. She turned off the stove and decided to go to the store for the unfortunate cabbage. Samantha hastily dressed, threw on her coat and grabbed her purse and money. Snow had fallen the day before, covering frozen slippery puddles and patches of icy asphalt smoothed by children. Samantha carefully avoided dangerous spots along curbs and reached the store where Melora worked. "Hello," Melora greeted her. "I just got some sausage. It smells so good. I've already eaten 3 sandwiches. Take some, you won't regret it." "Thank you, but I only need cabbage today," smiled Samantha, scanning the counter.
I don't have any. Everything was sold out yesterday, and today the delivery truck from the vegetable store broke down. Melora waved her hands. Try the mini market 2 streets over. Samantha didn't want to go that far, but she remembered she had already prepared everything else at home. Luckily, the market had the right-sized cabbage. Samantha paid for it, put it in her bag, and set off on her way back. In some places, the snow deceptively covered slippery areas. Samantha decided to take a shortcut to get home sooner. She turned down a park and began to descend into a small ravine by stone stairs. At its bottom flowed a brook which, despite the frost, gurgled merrily over the stones, snaking along dry reed bushes. Samantha was almost at the bridge over the brook. Only a few steps remained. A crow flew overhead with a shrill caw. The treacherous snow covered the icy steps. The woman lost her balance on the slippery ice, grasped at nothing as she struggled to catch the railing, and collapsed down the snow-covered stairs. Samantha woke up from the cold and severe pain in her leg. She was lying by the brook near the bridge. The shin of her left leg was half in the icy water and throbbed with fiery pain. Samantha tried to get up, but she could barely move, as if her leg was squeezed in a vice. Tears came to her eyes involuntarily. After a few more attempts, she only managed to pull her foot out of the stream and crawl away a little. The frost pinched her wet pant leg and boots, intensifying the pain. The woman realized with horror that her left leg was broken, and she would definitely not be able to climb the treacherous stairs on her own. In her pocket, Samantha fumbled for her cell phone. The screen was broken, a grid of cracks covering the display. She could barely see anything. Samantha dialed her son's number. The phone rang with long beeps on the first, second, and fifth calls. Samantha hit the ground with her palm in frustration and called her daughter, but she was defending the school's honour at a competition, and her things and phone were left in the locker room. The situation was dire. A remote trail in a residential area, a ravine, a broken leg, frost and unreachable children. Samantha wiped her tears with a glove and somehow found "damn" in the phone book. The broken screen prevented her from reading further. She held the device to her ear, and after 2 beeps, she heard a familiar voice. "Hello?" "Damon, help me! I fell, my leg is broken. The phone is broken," Samantha spoke confusedly. "What? Where are you? I'll be right there," Damon replied, clearly worried. "In the park," Samantha looked around holding the phone. "By the bridge. I don't know the exact address." "Got it. I'll call an ambulance and come myself. Hang in there," came the reply. Exhausted, Samantha laid her hooded head on the snow. The blue sky was filled with puffy clouds, and the occasional bird flitted by. How odd that on such a blustery day, just before Christmas, she had managed to break her leg. It was absurd. Then her mother's words came to mind. Every absurdity is moulded into something. What was that just now? Wendy got up from her chair. "Where are you going, honey?" "Don't be cruel, Wendy," Damon said to his wife and called an ambulance. "Oh, so you're our kind-hearted Mother Teresa, helping all the poor and destitute?" Wendy burst out, waving her hands. "Don't you dare go to her, Damon." "Wake up, Wendy. She's in danger." Damon raised his voice. He hurriedly took his driving license and put on the coat. "Let the paramedics save that mouse. You've already done her a favour by calling them," Wendy persisted. "Stop insulting her," Damon interrupted his wife. "If you leave now, I'll file for divorce. Do you understand?" Wendy declared. "I'll take everything from you, dear. The house, the car, and your dignity. You'll be as miserable as your cleaning lady. You should regain your own self-respect before trying to take it from others," Damon retorted. "You want a divorce? Go ahead. I haven't loved you for a long time. I'd rather be an ordinary clerk without a loving wife at home than spend another day with such a heartless person like you. All you care about is money and humiliating others."
Wendy turned purple with anger and began gulping air like a fish without water. Damon rushed out, hurriedly drove the car out of the gate, and saw an ambulance speed past him. The March raindrops chimed on everything they touched. Through the thawed ground, we glimpsed patches of earth with battered yet green grass. Spring was eager to replace the weary winter. Samantha stood on the porch of a small country house, wrapped in a warm shawl and leaning on her crutch. The cast on her leg was cold, but it was covered in colourful marker drawings, Anita and Mark's handiwork. A little over 2 months had passed. Wendy made good on her threats, intending to take everything from her ex-husband, down to the last penny. Damon, however, didn't object. He agreed to almost all of his ex-wife's conditions, only asking the court not to keep his daughter from him. Wendy was furious, cursed, and tried to forbid Allie from even approaching her father and his new partner, but to no avail. The judge sided with Damon. Damon moved to his parents' old house, which they visited only a few times a year. Mrs. Rennert took her son's divorce and the resulting blow to his reputation hard, but Damon's father supported him.
"I never liked that witch either," he once whispered to his offspring. "No amount of money can replace humanity."
Matt burst through the gate, red-cheeked with wet spots on his jacket. A snowball followed, crashing against the wall next to Samantha.
"Hey, careful!"
Matt shouted.
"You'll hurt our mum. What a volleyball player are you?"
An embarrassed Anita appeared, immediately getting hit by a retaliatory snowball on her neck. Matt laughed, peeking out from around the corner.
"That's enough playing,"
Samantha calmed them. "You'll break the windows with your games." The children continued their clumsy frolicking in the snow, but stopped throwing snowballs. A car pulled up to the gate, and Damon and Allie got out. "Why did you come outside? You should have stayed in," Damon asked anxiously as he entered the yard.
"I've had enough of staying in for 2 months," the woman laughed.
Damon stomped his feet, shaking off the snow, and walked up the steps. "What's new?" Samantha asked after his warm embrace.
"First, I barely managed to take Allie. Wendy forbids her to communicate with you and Matt," Damon boasted. "But Allie, she's unstoppable."
"Yes, she doesn't lack courage," Samantha agreed. "Second, happy beginning of spring to you." The man produced a small bouquet of flowers from behind his back. "Thank you, but it's already started." The woman marvelled. "You know, I owe you at least 20 congratulations on all the years I've been away." Damon hugged her again and kissed her forehead. "And third," he continued, still holding Samantha, "Mr. Bowman, the director of the City Theatre, is waiting for you to audition right after your cast is removed." "What?" Samantha thought she had misheard. She stared at Damon in joy and amazement. "How? I thought their doors were closed to me a long time ago." "You should thank these 2 clever kids." Damon nodded at Matt and Allie, who were whispering and giggling about something. "I only helped a little. After all, I remembered how you dreamed of the stage in school." Tears welled up in Samantha's eyes from the overwhelming emotions. For the first time in a long time, they were tears of joy. Yes, not everything was settled yet, and there was still much to do, but the main thing was that they were finally together. All of them. And everything would definitely work out.